On September 17, 2019, a man was thrown out of Monaco's super yacht marina, right in front of everyone. His clothes weren't expensive enough, his watch wasn't flashy enough, his appearance wasn't billionaire enough. Security Chief Laurent Beaumont was certain he'd made the right call, until 5 minutes later, when a black Maybach pulled into the marina and Sharon Osbourne stepped out. But by the time Laurent realized who he'd just tried to turn away, it was already too late. The Mediterranean sun was beating down mercilessly on Port Hercules. Temperature, 31 degrees. Humidity, 78%. With the Monaco Yacht Show just 2 days away, the marina was more crowded than ever. Most of the men walking along the dock wore linen suits, while women's heels clicked sharply against the wooden platform. Louboutin, Hermès, Rolex. Everything in this marina had a price tag, and those tags always ran 6 figures. Port Hercules wasn't just a harbour. It was an arena where Forbes list names sized each other up, where the length of your yacht competed with the size of your ego. And right in the middle of this arena, there was a man walking in a faded Black Sabbath t-shirt, blue jeans, and a worn-out pair of sneakers. Ozzy Osbourne had spent most of his life being misunderstood. He'd come up from Birmingham's Aston neighbourhood, dropped out of school at 15, done time for robbery, and then became one of the most iconic voices in rock history. But today, in this marina, he was just an old, tired-looking man. Parkinson's disease had left a slight tremor in his hands over the past few years. Behind his sunglasses, his eyes were weary. Sharon had talked him into this Monaco trip. "Get some rest, breathe in the sea air," she'd said. And Ozzy had wanted to see their yacht. He hadn't been on it in months. When he entered the marina, he walked past the security booth. The young guard inside was busy with his phone and didn't even look up. Ozzy kept walking, past Dock A, B, C, until he approached Section D, the super yacht zone. Here, the boats started at 50 meters and went up to 130. The weekly charter fee for any one of them exceeded the price of a house. Ozzy was heading toward where his own yacht was moored when he heard a voice behind him. Sharp, commanding, impatient. Ozzy turned toward the voice. Standing in front of him was the marina's security chief. The man's name was Laurent Beaumont, 52 years old, former French Navy officer. He'd been working at Port Hercules for 15 years and had seen plenty of famous faces pass through this marina during his career. But only one thing mattered to him: protocol. His uniform was perfectly pressed, the epaulettes on his shoulders gleaming in the sun. Beside him stood another security guard, a young one, shy-looking, early 20s. His name was Marco, and this was his first week working at the marina. Laurent approached Ozzy and spoke in English heavy with a French accent. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "This is a restricted area, the super yacht zone. Day boats and visitors are not permitted." Ozzy stopped and looked at the man. He lowered his sunglasses slightly. "I'm going to my yacht," he said calmly. A small smile appeared on Laurent's face, but it wasn't a smile of politeness. It was pity. Plenty of people came to this marina trying to act rich, taking selfies to post on social media. This old man must be one of them, Laurent replied, keeping his mask of courtesy intact. "Sir," he said, "the smallest boat moored here starts at 50 million euros. You're in the wrong section. Day boats and smaller yachts are in Section C. I can help you find your way to the right place." A faint smile crossed Ozzy's lips. Laurent couldn't understand what that smile meant, but anyone who'd seen it over a 40-year career, backstage, in interviews, on television shows, they knew. This was Ozzy being patient, the calm before the storm. "I'm going to my yacht," Ozzy said again, slower this time, pronouncing each word separately. "Over there," he said, pointing to the massive vessel at the very end of the dock. Laurent turned his head and looked. There, at the most prestigious spot in Port Hercules, sat an 88-meter super yacht. 4 decks, helipad, swimming pool, estimated value well over $50 million. Laurent turned back and looked at Ozzy. The expression on his face hadn't changed. "Sir," he said, the patience draining from his voice, "I don't have time for jokes. That yacht belongs to a very important guest, and you, frankly, don't look like its owner. Marco, the young security guard, took a step back. Something was going wrong. He could feel it, but he couldn't figure out what. Laurent, on the other hand, was resolute. He had never made a mistake in his career, and this old, disheveled-looking man was definitely not a super yacht owner. He knew what billionaires looked like. Linen suits, expensive watches, confident postures. This man looked like he'd just walked in off the street. Ozzy pulled his phone from his pocket. It was an older model iPhone, the screen slightly cracked. He called Sharon. The phone rang a few times and she answered. "Sweetheart," Ozzy said, "there's a bit of a problem at the marina. I can't get to my yacht. People don't think it's mine." From the other end of the phone came Sharon's voice, first confused, then angry. Laurent watched the expression on Ozzy's face. The man still looked calm, but something was about to change. Sharon Osbourne was at that very moment having lunch at a luxury restaurant on the terrace of the Hermitage Hotel, high above Monaco. When she answered the phone, there was concern in her voice. "What do you mean you can't get to it?" she said. Ozzy explained the situation. Sharon's voice instantly sharpened like an ice-cold blade. "Stay there," she said. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." Ozzy hung up and looked at Laurent. "My wife is coming," he said. "Then we'll sort this out." Laurent shrugged. "Of course, sir. Let your wife come too, and we'll explain the situation. You're in the wrong section, and you're claiming ownership of the wrong yacht. This is a serious matter." But there was someone else watching everything unfold. Marco, the young security guard, was looking at his phone. A few minutes earlier, curious about this old man, he had noticed the Black Sabbath t-shirt and typed Black Sabbath into Google. Now his screen was filled with photos of Ozzy Osbourne. His face went pale. He wanted to say something to his boss, but Laurent had already turned away, talking into his radio. Marco stood frozen. This man, this old, disheveled-looking man, was a legend. 5 minutes later, a black Maybach pulled into the marina. Everyone stopped to watch the woman stepping out of the car. Sharon Osbourne, 66 years old, her red hair perfectly styled, wearing a white Chanel jacket and oversized sunglasses. Behind her were 2 other people. One was the marina's general manager, the other was the yacht's captain. As Sharon strode down the dock in her heels, each step sounded like a war drum. Sharon Osbourne had fought many battles throughout her life. She had fought with her own father, fought cancer, fought the media, fought her husband's addictions, but nothing could mobilize her this fast, someone disrespecting Ozzy. Now, as she walked down the dock, her eyes were searching for Laurent. When she found him, she stopped. An invisible current of electricity seemed to pass between them. The moment Laurent recognized Sharon, his brain started racing. If Sharon Osbourne was here, then the man next to him was... No, it couldn't be. That old, disheveled-looking man couldn't be Ozzy Osbourne. Rock legends didn't look like that, did they? But the expression on Sharon's face said everything. Laurent felt his stomach turn. He felt his 15 years of flawless career crumbling in an instant. His legs began to tremble. Sharon stopped right in front of Laurent. "So you're the gentleman," she said, her voice soft as silk, but sharp as poison, "who tried to throw my husband off his own yacht." Laurent's mouth went bone dry. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He swallowed. "Madam," he said, his voice trembling. There's been a misunderstanding. Protocol required. The clothes." Sharon raised her hand and the man fell silent. "The clothes?" Sharon said. "So because my husband didn't meet your dress code?" The crowd gathering on the dock was growing. Crew members from other yachts, wealthy tourists walking through the marina, even some yacht owners had stopped to watch. In Monaco, gossip was worth its weight in gold, and this scene was providing enough material for weeks to come. Laurent felt his career melting away before his eyes. "Madame Osbourne," he said, his voice now pleading, "please understand, my job is to ensure the security of this marina. Every day dozens of people come here trying to act like yacht owners. I was just following protocol." Sharon took another step closer. Laurent could smell her perfume now. Expensive, probably custom-made. "Protocol," Sharon said. "Let me tell you what protocol means. Protocol is treating a human being like a human being. Protocol is not judging someone by their appearance. When my husband came to this marina for his own yacht, you looked at his t-shirt, you looked at his shoes, and you decided that this man doesn't look rich enough, doesn't look important enough. Well, let me tell you something. That t-shirt is an original Black Sabbath shirt from 1978. It's probably worth more than your house. But that's not even the point. The point is, even if my husband were wearing a burlap sack, it wouldn't change who he is. Laurent's eyes had begun to well up. In 30 years of military and security career, he had never been this humiliated. He could feel the stares around him. He could hear the whispers. He was living through the longest minutes of his life. And right at that moment, Ozzy stepped in. "Sharon," he said, his voice soft but firm. "That's enough." Sharon turned and looked at her husband. In over 40 years of marriage, she had seen this look countless times. Ozzy's calming, balancing gaze, the water that extinguished Sharon's fire. Sharon took a deep breath. Ozzy approached Laurent. The man was trembling. His face was bright red, tears in his eyes. His career, his reputation, everything had just collapsed. Ozzy stood before him and looked at him in silence for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with a Birmingham accent, but gentle. "You know," Ozzy said, "I've been thrown out of everywhere my whole life. Got thrown out of Black Sabbath, got thrown out of bars, got thrown out of hotels. Bloody hell, I even got thrown out of my own house once. And here's what I learned. It's not about getting thrown out, it's about what you do. You did your job. You did it wrong, but you did your job." Laurent raised his head and looked into Ozzy's eyes. He had expected to see anger there, but what he saw was different. There was understanding, and maybe a hint of amusement. Ozzy continued. "I grew up in Birmingham," he said, "a neighborhood called Aston. We were poor, and people always looked at us that way. Not good enough. Worthless. But you know what happened? Now I'm here. And you're here. And we're both breathing the same air. No one in this world is worth more than anyone else, mate. That's the only thing I've learned." Laurent's lips trembled. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Osbourne. Ozzy placed his hand on the man's shoulder. "It's all right," he said. "These things happen. Everyone makes mistakes. I once bit the head off a bat on live television, so I know a thing or two about mistakes." A small smile appeared on Laurent's face. Through his tears, Sharon still stood with her arms crossed, but the anger on her face had softened slightly. She had always loved this side of her husband. They called him the Prince of Darkness, but his heart was made of gold. The crowd that had gathered at the marina was now witnessing a different scene. A few minutes ago they had expected a confrontation, maybe shouting, maybe security being called. But instead, what they saw was an old rock star comforting a man. Someone pulled out their phone and took a photo. Within seconds, that photo would be all over social media. Ozzy turned to Sharon. "Come on, sweetheart," he said. "Let's go to the yacht. I'm tired." Sharon smiled softly and took her husband's arm. The two of them began walking together toward the end of the dock. Behind them, Laurent and Marco remained. But the story didn't end there. 3 days later, Laurent went to the general manager's office to resign from the marina. His face was still flushed with shame. But the manager stopped him. "Mr. Osbourne wants to see you," he said. Laurent froze. "What?" "Yes," the manager said. "He called this morning. He wants to see you on the yacht." Laurent's heart was pounding like it would burst from his chest. His legs trembling, he walked toward the yacht. Ozzy greeted him on the deck. This time he was wearing nicer clothes. Must have been Sharon's doing. "Come, sit down," Ozzy said. "I looked into you. You served in the French Navy for 20 years. You served in 2 wars. You have medals." Laurent lowered his head. "Yes, sir," Ozzy continued. "And now you're working as a security chief at a marina. Why?" Laurent was silent for a while. Then he began to speak. "Wars," he said. "Wars change a person. The things I saw, the things I did. One day I woke up and I couldn't hold a gun anymore. My hands started shaking. The doctors said it was post-traumatic stress disorder. I retired. This job is calm, safe. Nobody dies." Ozzy looked at the man for a long time. Then he spoke. "I shake too," he said, raising his hands. "Parkinson's. The doctors said I'd never be able to perform on stage again. But I'm still here. Because you know what? What defines us in this world isn't our illnesses. It isn't our mistakes. What matters is whether you get back up after you fall." Tears were streaming down Laurent's eyes. For the first time in his 30-year career, he was crying in front of a stranger. And that stranger was the man he had tried to throw out just a few days ago. Ozzy pulled a card from his pocket. "This," he said, "is my foundation's number. There's a program for veterans, psychological support, therapy, everything. If you want, I can sign you up. It's free." Laurent took the card. He noticed his hands were shaking. "Why?" he said, his voice choked. "Why are you doing this?" Ozzy shrugged. "Because people always thought I was some kind of monster, a bat-eating devil worshipper. But I'm just a kid from Birmingham, and I know that sometimes people have bad days. They make bad decisions. That doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them human." After that day, Laurent didn't resign. He joined Ozzy's foundation and began therapy. 2 years later, he became a volunteer himself and started helping other veterans. He still worked at the Monaco marina, but he was a different man now. He told every new employee the same story. "One day," he'd say, "an old man came to this marina. He was wearing an old t-shirt. I tried to throw him out, and that man taught me the most important lesson of my life. Never ever judge a book by its cover." As for Marco, that young security guard, after that day he listened to every Black Sabbath album. He read Ozzy's autobiography, and in 2025 he went to Ozzy's final concert in Birmingham. In the crowd, among 40,000 people, he sang Paranoid with tears in his eyes. The people next to him didn't understand why he was crying, but Marco knew. He had once failed to recognize a legend, and that legend had forgiven him. On July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne passed away at the age of 76. Just 17 days after his final concert in Birmingham. The world lost a legend, but for people like Laurent and Marco, he wasn't just a rock star. He was the man who taught them what humanity means. The Prince of Darkness was, in truth, the light itself. Ozzy once said, "Hating people isn't a productive way of living. So what's the point in hating anyone? There's enough hate in the world as it is, without me adding to it." And on that hot September day at the Monaco marina, he showed everyone what those words truly meant. Not with words, but with actions.